The alien queen let me go, until her child ran after me calling my name. The cold void of space stretched out before the ship's large viewing window. A starless expanse, broken only by distant galaxies flickering like faint embers. For Captain Cole Hunter, the emptiness of space had become a familiar companion, a companion he had grown to understand after years of being a loner in the void. He had been in space long enough to know that there were things out there no one should ever find. Things that were better left untouched. That was exactly why his heart skipped a beat when the ship's sensors picked up something unusual. It was a blip, a small, seemingly insignificant signal coming from the edge of known space, a region rarely ventured into by humans. A part of Cole wanted to ignore it. He had more important things to do, and an unexplained signal in deep space wasn't going to change that. But another part, the part that thrived on adventure, made him tap the controls to investigate. The message was faint, almost lost in the vast black ocean, but something about it felt wrong. It felt like it was meant for him. As the ship cut through the silence of space, Cole prepared for what he might find. He was alone, his crew scattered across various missions, and he was a man used to solitude. But there was something calling him now, and it was impossible to ignore. The signal led him to an asteroid field, where the wreckage of a massive ship drifted among the rocks. It was a relic from another time, ancient and forgotten. The hull was cracked, and the remains of what once was a mighty vessel lay broken in the vacuum. It was the size of a city, an imposing relic from an extinct civilization. Cole felt a shiver run down his spine as he brought the ship closer. As he docked, he could see signs of life, a faint flicker of lights, a pulse of energy in the wreckage. Someone had to be alive, someone or something. His boots echoed in the silence of the dark corridor as he moved toward the source of the signal. The walls of the ship were covered in strange symbols, alien glyphs that seemed to shift and change as he passed them. He had seen many languages and symbols during his travels, but these were nothing like he had encountered before. The atmosphere was stale, old, and heavy, like the ship had been forgotten for centuries. Yet there was a certain energy in the air, an ancient, forgotten power. Cole's pulse quickened. He was nearing the heart of the ship. He turned a corner and froze. There, in a large chamber, lay what appeared to be a throne or some kind of ceremonial seat, bathed in the dim light of the ship's flickering systems. The throne was empty, but the room was not. In the center of the chamber, a large pod stood. Its surface was made of a translucent material, glowing faintly, and inside it something shifted. Cole felt his breath catch in his throat. In that moment, something stirred in the pod. The figure inside was humanoid, but unlike anything Cole had ever seen. Tall, slender, and with smooth, translucent skin that shimmered in the dim light. The figure's eyes were closed, but Cole could feel the presence, the power emanating from it. He couldn't take his eyes off it. The alien was no longer just a symbol of lost civilization. It was alive, and it was waiting. Cole approached cautiously. His instincts told him to leave, to turn back and forget the madness of what was happening. But another part of him, the part that had brought him to this moment, pushed him forward. The pod's surface hummed, a faint resonance vibrating through the air. He reached out, his hand trembling as he touched the glowing surface. Suddenly, the pod began to open with a hiss, and the figure inside shifted. Cole stepped back, his heart racing. The alien woman, no, not a woman, but a queen, a being of royalty and ancient power, slowly lifted her head. Her eyes opened, and they locked onto Cole's. For a moment, neither of them moved. There was no need for words, no communication, just a shared understanding. She had awoken from a long slumber, and Cole, with his human mind and curiosity, had been the one to disturb it. "You," she said, her voice soft but carrying an authority that sent chills down his spine. "You are human," Cole nodded slowly. He couldn't find words. There was something about her gaze that rendered him speechless. This wasn't just a being from another world. This was something ancient, something that had seen things he couldn't even imagine. The queen rose from her pod with fluid grace. She was taller than him, with an aura of power that made Cole feel small in her presence. Her long, flowing hair shimmered like liquid silver, and her features were perfect, almost too perfect. "I thought you were all gone," she said, her voice still carrying the weight of centuries of solitude. "I thought my people had faded into myth." Cole finally found his voice, though it trembled. Who are you?" Her gaze softened, and for the first time a flicker of something like sadness passed over her features. "I am Zira, queen of the Virilac," she said. And you, human, are the first to find me. Cole's mind raced. The Virilak. He had heard of them before, legends of an ancient race, a civilization that had once ruled the stars only to vanish mysteriously. Some believed they had been wiped out by an unknown enemy. Others thought they had gone into hiding. But Zira was here, and she was alive. Zira studied him for a moment, her eyes narrowing as if seeing something deep within him. You are not like the others, she mused. You are different. Before Cole could ask what she meant, she took a step toward him. The air seemed to hum with energy as her presence grew stronger. Her gaze never left him, and in that moment, Cole felt as though he had been pulled into something much larger than himself. I have waited long, Zira continued. Long for someone to help me. Cole blinked, confusion swirling in his mind. Help you? How can I? Zira's hand moved quickly, and suddenly the chamber was flooded with holographic images, maps, star charts, and alien artifacts. 1,000 years of history unfolded before him, showing a species that had once ruled the galaxy. The Virilak were powerful, but they had been betrayed, hunted by a force so great that they had no choice but to hide, to sleep, to wait. Zira's gaze softened again, and she took a step closer to Cole. I was the last of my people, but I feel something, a presence, you may be the one to help me find my child. The words struck Cole like a bolt of lightning. Your child? Zira nodded. My daughter, the heir to my throne, she is the last of my bloodline. If she is lost, my people are lost. You must help me find her. Cole's heart raced. What had he stumbled upon? He had come here for answers, but now he had a much larger question. What role did he play in this story? How was he involved in this ancient conflict between the Virilak and whatever force had destroyed them? He didn't have time to think. Zira moved toward the door, and Cole followed her, unsure of what the future held. But one thing was certain. His life had changed forever, and whatever lay ahead, it would not be easy. Cole had never imagined that a simple exploration could turn into something so complicated. What had started as a routine mission to investigate a strange signal had quickly spiraled into a meeting with an alien queen, Zira, the last of her people, the Virilak. Now, with a strange sense of responsibility weighing on his shoulders, Cole was about to embark on a journey that would change everything. The ship's engines hummed steadily as Cole followed Zira through the dark, winding corridors of the abandoned vessel. She moved with a quiet grace, her long, flowing hair shimmering faintly under the flickering lights. Cole felt a strange unease in the air, as if the ship itself was alive, breathing with an energy that he couldn't quite understand. Zira didn't speak much as they moved, her mind clearly focused on something far away. Her gaze was distant, her thoughts drifting as if she were searching for something in the vastness of the galaxy. Cole found himself wondering about her, about the strange bond that seemed to have formed between them in such a short time. How could he, just a human, be the one to help her find her daughter, the last hope of an ancient race? He didn't have answers, but something deep inside him told him that the fate of the Virilak, and perhaps even humanity, was now tied to his own. They reached the central chamber of the ship, the place where Cole had first encountered Zira. The throne-like seat was empty now, but the holographic projections of alien maps and star charts were still active. Zira paused, her fingers lightly brushing the air as she manipulated the holograms with ease. It was clear she was more at home here than Cole would ever be. I have been searching for so long, she said, her voice softer now, tinged with a sadness that made Cole's heart ache. My people, we were once the rulers of this galaxy, but we were betrayed by those we trusted. The Vicari, a ruthless species, hunted us to the brink of extinction, and in the end only a handful of us survived. Now I search for my daughter, the last of my bloodline. If she is lost, everything will be lost. Cole took a step forward, unable to hide his curiosity. And what makes you think I can help you find her? Zira's eyes flickered toward him, and for the first time he saw a hint of something like hope in her gaze. Because, Cole, you are more than just a human. You have something that my people need. Something that may hold the key to our survival. The words hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. Cole didn't know how to respond. He was just a man, a former soldier and explorer, nothing more. But Zira seemed to believe that he had a role to play in the survival of an entire species. The pressure of it weighed on him, but at the same time, there was a strange sense of purpose that he hadn't felt in years. Zira continued, her voice growing more urgent. I felt her presence, Cole. I felt my daughter's energy, and it is calling to me. It is faint, but it is real. She is out there somewhere. If we can find her, we can rebuild. We can restore what was lost. Cole nodded slowly, trying to process everything. A part of him wanted to turn back, to leave this alien ship and return to the familiar, the safe. But another part of him, the part that had led him to space in the first place, knew that he couldn't walk away. Not now. "So where do we start?" he asked, his voice steady despite the storm of thoughts racing through his mind. Zira turned to him, her expression unwavering. "We need to go to the Vicari homeworld. It is there that I last sensed her presence. The Vicari have hidden themselves for years, but they are not invincible. We can track them." Cole frowned. The Vicari. He had heard of them before, whispered stories of their brutal conquest of the galaxy. They were known for their ruthless tactics, their technologically advanced fleets, and their insatiable hunger for power. They had wiped out countless civilizations, including Zira's own, and now it seemed they were the key to finding her daughter. "Are you sure?" Cole asked. "Going to their homeworld, that's going to be dangerous. The Vicari won't just let us walk in and take what we want." Zira's gaze hardened, her determination clear. "I am not asking you to walk in, Cole. I am asking you to help me destroy them." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. Destroy them. It wasn't a request, it was a command. Zira, despite her regal demeanor, had the soul of a warrior. She was not a queen who would sit idly by while her enemies roamed free. She would fight, and she would fight to win. "We'll need a plan," Cole said, his mind already running through possibilities. The Vicari were not like the enemies he had fought before. They were ruthless, and they had a fleet at their disposal. But Cole had faced insurmountable odds before. And if he was going to be a part of this, he would need to make sure they were prepared. Zira smiled, a faint glimmer of approval in her eyes. "I knew I chose wisely. I will give you everything you need, ships, weapons, and knowledge, but you must be ready, Cole. Once we begin this mission, there will be no turning back." Cole nodded. He had already known that. There was no turning back now. The next few days were a blur. Zira provided Cole with everything he needed. Advanced weaponry, tactical data, and a vessel capable of traveling to the Vicari homeworld. She was a queen, after all, and her people had resources at their disposal. She had already begun to prepare for the assault, assembling a team of loyal Virilac warriors who were as determined as she was to avenge their fallen civilization. Cole was given command of the mission. As strange as it was, he felt a growing sense of responsibility. The more he learned about the Virilac and their history, the more he realized that their fate was not just tied to Zira. It was tied to him, too. He was human, yes, but there was something about him that Zira believed could turn the tide in their favor. And that thought terrified him. As the ship sped toward the Vicari homeworld, Cole spent long hours studying the data Zira had provided him. The Vicari were fierce, but they weren't invincible. With the right tactics, Cole knew they could strike at the heart of their empire. But he couldn't do it alone. Zira's warriors would fight beside him, but he needed to rely on his own skills, too. The final approach to the Vicari homeworld was tense. Cole stood at the bridge of the ship, watching the blue and green planet grow larger on the view screen. This was it, the moment that would decide the fate of the galaxy and perhaps the future of humanity. Zira stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the planet below. "My daughter is out there," she said softly, "and so is my vengeance." Cole glanced at her. He had never seen a more determined look on anyone's face. Zira was not just a queen. She was a force of nature, driven by the need to reclaim what had been taken from her. "We'll find her," Cole said, his voice steady despite the anxiety that bubbled in his chest. "We must," Zira replied. "For the Virilac, for all of us." The ship's engines hummed steadily as they descended into the atmosphere of the Vicari homeworld, preparing for the most dangerous mission of their lives. In the distance, Cole could see the glimmer of Vicari ships patrolling the skies. But he wasn't afraid. Not anymore. The war for the galaxy was about to begin. The planet Vicara was nothing like Cole had expected. From the view screen, it looked like any other habitable world, lush, vibrant, and rich with life. But as they descended through the clouds, the true nature of the Vicari homeworld revealed itself. The surface was scarred, with industrial complexes and military installations sprawled across the landscape, their stark steel structures towering over the natural beauty. This was a world forged in the fires of war, and Cole could feel the tension in the air as they approached. Zira stood beside him, her expression unreadable. She had been quiet since the ship began its descent, her thoughts no doubt focused on the mission ahead. Cole could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was it. The final confrontation with the Vicari, the moment that would decide the fate of Zira's people, and perhaps even humanity. He glanced at the ship's readouts, his mind running through the plan they had spent days preparing. They would land just outside the Vicari capital, where the remnants of the Virilak people had been hidden for centuries. The Vicari wouldn't know they were coming, not until it was too late. The ship touched down with a soft thud, the landing gear absorbing the impact. The hum of the engines faded, and a heavy silence fell over the crew. Cole took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts before giving the order. "Everyone ready?" he asked, his voice steady despite the chaos of emotions swirling inside him. The soldiers surrounding him, a mix of Virilak warriors and human crew members, nodded. Zira's warriors, tall and imposing with their ancient armor and glowing eyes, were silent, their faces grim but resolute. They knew what was at stake. This was more than just a battle. It was a fight for survival, for the future of their species. "Let's move," Cole said, stepping toward the hatch. The door hissed open, and the cold air of Vikara rushed in, carrying with it the scent of metallic dust and the faint hum of distant machinery. Cole took his first step onto the surface of the Vicari homeworld, his boots crunching against the rocky terrain. The sky above was clouded with a heavy, dark atmosphere, and in the distance, he could see the outline of the Vicari capital, a sprawling city surrounded by towering walls and fortified defenses. "We need to get inside the city," Zira said, her voice low but urgent. "My daughter is somewhere in there. She's close. I can feel it." Cole nodded, his mind already running through the plan. They had no time to waste. The longer they stayed on the surface, the greater the chance they would be detected. The Vicari had eyes everywhere. They had to move quickly and strike hard. The team moved in tight formation, sticking to the shadows and avoiding the main roads. The Vicari patrols were frequent, their armed soldiers scanning the area with advanced technology. Cole knew they couldn't afford to be spotted. One wrong move, and the whole mission could be compromised. As they approached the outskirts of the city, the air grew heavier. Cole could sense the tension among the crew, their nerves taut with anticipation. Zira walked with a quiet confidence, her eyes scanning the horizon, as though she could sense the danger before it appeared. Her people had been hunted for so long, now the time for hiding was over. She was ready for the fight. "We're close," Zira murmured, her voice barely audible. "I can feel her presence stronger now. My daughter is here." Cole looked around, trying to get his bearings. They were only a few kilometers from the city's main entrance, but the Vicari's defenses were formidable. There was no way they would get through the gates without being detected. But Zira's people had lived in the shadows for centuries. They knew how to move without being seen. They split into smaller groups, each taking a different route into the city. Cole and Zira led the way, moving swiftly through the narrow streets, their footsteps muffled by the thick dust that covered the ground. As they approached the city center, the atmosphere grew more oppressive. The air was thick with the hum of advanced technology, and the distant sound of Vicari chatter echoed through the streets. "Stay low," Cole whispered, his hand resting on the handle of his weapon. "We can't afford to be seen." They moved through the darkened streets, weaving between abandoned buildings and dark alleys. The Vicari had a tight grip on the city, but they hadn't completely locked it down. There were places where they could hide, places where they could move undetected. And Cole knew that every step they took brought them closer to Zira's daughter. They reached a heavily guarded area near the center of the city, where large, imposing structures rose high above them. This was the heart of the Vicari's power, the place where their leaders resided. Zira's expression darkened as they approached. She could feel her daughter's presence nearby, and yet it was guarded by layers of defenses. "We'll have to go in from above," she said, her voice firm. "There's an entrance on the rooftop." Cole nodded. "We'll need to take out the guards first." The team moved quickly, taking out the Vicari sentries one by one, using quiet weapons and stealth. It was a delicate operation, but the Virilak warriors were skilled, and Cole had trained his crew well. They worked like shadows, disappearing into the darkness and reappearing when needed. Soon they reached the rooftop, and Cole felt a surge of anticipation. This was it, the final stage of the mission. They were so close now. Zira led the way, her eyes fixed on the door ahead. "My daughter is inside," she said, her voice low but filled with emotion. She is my legacy. Everything I fought for is in her hands. Cole didn't respond. He didn't need to. The weight of her words hung heavily in the air, and he could feel the urgency in her every movement. They entered the building, moving through the dimly lit corridors. The walls were adorned with alien symbols, strange glyphs that seemed to pulse with an energy all their own. It was clear that the Vicari had not only conquered this world, they had twisted it to suit their needs, turning it into something unrecognizable. Finally, they reached a large chamber. The air inside was thick with tension, and Cole could feel a cold chill creeping down his spine. He wasn't sure what he expected, but this wasn't it. The room was silent, eerily so, and the walls were lined with strange devices, some of which Cole couldn't even begin to understand. In the center of the room stood a figure, tall and regal, though hunched and weak. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, with silver hair cascading down her back and eyes that shone with a deep, alien wisdom. But it was her presence that struck Cole the most. There was a power in her, an ancient, untapped potential that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Zira's expression softened as she stepped forward. "My daughter," she whispered. The woman in front of them lifted her head slowly, her gaze locking onto Zira. There was no recognition in her eyes, only confusion and fear. The woman's lips parted as she spoke, her voice trembling. "Mother," she said softly, her tone unsure, almost broken. Zira's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't move closer. "It's me, my daughter. I've come to bring you home." The woman's eyes flickered with recognition, but then something else stirred within them, a flash of something darker, something far more dangerous. Her gaze shifted to Cole, and for the first time, Cole felt the full weight of the power that lay within her. "My name is not important," the woman said, her voice now filled with cold authority. "I am the last of my kind, and I am not your salvation." Zira's heart skipped a beat, and for the first time, Cole saw fear in her eyes. Her daughter was not what they expected. She was something else entirely, a weapon, a force beyond their control. And suddenly, the real fight was just beginning. The tension in the room thickened as Cole stood motionless, trying to process the words of Zira's daughter. The woman before them, her skin shimmering with an ethereal glow, did not carry the warmth or recognition that Zira had hoped for. There was no joy, no relief in her eyes. Only a cold, distant stare that seemed to pierce through everything, cutting right to the heart of Cole's doubts. The woman wasn't just lost, she had changed, something deep and irreversible. Zira stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "You are my daughter, and I've come to bring you home. The Vicari, your enemies, are dead. The war is over. You don't have to hide anymore." The woman's expression flickered for a brief moment, as if her mother's words reached her somewhere deep inside. But it was quickly replaced with something darker, a coldness that could freeze the air itself. "The war is never over," she replied, her voice harsh, almost mechanical. "And I am not your daughter anymore." Zira's face softened as if she had been slapped, but she didn't retreat. She took another step, her eyes never leaving the woman. "What happened to you?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "I have searched for so long. We are the last of our kind, and now you reject everything we are." The woman's lips curled into something resembling a bitter smile. "You are not the only one who has changed, Mother. You left me here to die. You abandoned me when I needed you most." The words stung like a lash. Zira faltered for a moment, her gaze wavering. But then determination returned. She squared her shoulders and stepped even closer, despite the fear that threatened to rise inside her. "Whatever they did to you, I will undo it," Zira declared, her voice a mixture of authority and desperation. "We will heal together." Cole, watching the exchange, felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. He wasn't part of this family. He had no right to interfere. But somehow it felt as though the entire fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. If Zira's daughter refused to join them, if she rejected the chance to rebuild her people, it could mean the end for the Virilac. And that would mean the end for humanity, too. The daughter's eyes narrowed. "You cannot undo what's been done. They've already broken me. I am a tool, a weapon, and I will never be what you want me to be." Zira recoiled, pain flickering across her face. "You are more than that. You are our future." A long silence followed, heavy with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. The woman, no, the queen, stayed motionless, her body radiating an unnatural energy. And in her eyes, Cole could see something far more frightening than the Vicari, emptiness. A deep, consuming void. "I know what you think of me," she finally said, her voice dark with bitterness. "But I don't care. The Vicari did not defeat us. What defeated us was our own weakness, and now I am free. I don't need you. I don't need anyone. Zira took another step forward, her voice gentle but insistent. You're not free. You're being controlled, manipulated. Please let me help you. But the woman shook her head slowly, her eyes glowing brighter with a dangerous intensity. You are weak, Mother. You've always been weak, and that's why I was left to grow up here alone on this forsaken world. They didn't need to break me, they just needed to give me power. Zira stepped back, her breath caught in her throat. You're not the weapon they made you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You are my daughter. You are the last of the Virilac. You are my hope. For a moment, the woman, her daughter, looked at her as though considering the words. Her eyes softened just the slightest, but the mask of indifference quickly returned. She straightened, folding her arms across her chest. I don't need your hope, she said coldly. I have no place in your world. Zira's voice cracked, the weight of everything she had been carrying finally breaking through. Please come with me. We can rebuild together. But her daughter wasn't listening. Her gaze shifted toward Cole for the first time, and in that moment Cole felt a cold chill run down his spine. He had always known that this mission was dangerous. But this was something different. This was no longer just a battle between two species. This was a battle for the soul of the Virilac themselves. You don't belong here, human, the woman said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. You've meddled in things that you don't understand. You think you can save us. You think you can control what's been done to me. Cole didn't respond right away. He stood there, unsure of how to even begin addressing this twisted version of Zira's daughter. I don't know what you've been through, he said finally, his voice steady but filled with the gravity of the situation. But you're not alone anymore. There's a place for you with the Virilac, with humanity, with me. The woman's laughter echoed through the chamber, hollow and mocking. You humans, she spat. You think you can just fix everything. You think you can save us, but we are beyond saving. Zira's face twisted in anguish. No, you are the future, my daughter. You are the hope of our people. Without you, there's nothing left for us. But the woman was already turning away, her back to them, her energy pulsing in the air like a storm brewing. You are not my people, and I am not your hope. Before Cole or Zira could react, the woman raised her hands, and the ground beneath them began to shake. The air crackled with energy, and the temperature in the room dropped. It was as if the very atmosphere was charged with an unnatural power, and it took all of Cole's training to resist the urge to draw his weapon. You don't know what you've done, Zira's daughter murmured, her voice low and dangerous. Now you will see the true strength of the Virilac. In that moment, the air seemed to thicken, and Cole realized with a sudden, horrifying clarity that they had made a terrible mistake. Zira's daughter wasn't just a lost soul. They had awakened a force far more dangerous than anything they had encountered before. A weapon, yes, but a weapon that was now far beyond anyone's control. Zira stepped forward again, her expression filled with both sorrow and determination. I won't fight you, my daughter. I won't let the Vicari take you again. I won't let them use you as a tool. The woman turned, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It's too late for that. The Vicari have used me, but now I am free. And you, her gaze flicked to Cole, her lips curling into a sneer. You will regret ever stepping foot on this world. Before Cole could react, the woman released a pulse of energy, a force so powerful that it sent both him and Zira flying backward. Cole crashed against the far wall, the impact knocking the wind out of him. He struggled to push himself up, but the pain in his chest told him something had cracked. He couldn't tell if it was his ribs or his resolve. Zira was already rising, her face pale, but her eyes filled with the same fire she had shown on their journey here. We can still save her, Cole, she whispered. We have to. But Cole didn't answer. He couldn't. The woman was no longer someone they could save. She was a threat, one that even Zira might not be able to stop. The battle had only just begun. The room was silent except for the heavy breathing of the team. Cole had barely managed to regain his footing, his head pounding from the impact with the wall. His ribs ached and his hands trembled, but it was the scene before him that paralyzed him with fear. Zira's daughter, this powerful, dangerous being, stood in the center of the room, her energy crackling around her like a storm about to break. The air felt thick, oppressive, and Cole knew they had no time to waste. Zira, though knocked back like him, was already standing again, determination in her eyes. She moved toward her daughter, her voice soft but filled with desperation. You don't have to do this. You're not alone, I'm here." But her daughter, the one who should have been the beacon of hope for her people, turned away without a second glance. "You think your words can undo what's been done to me?" she said, her voice cold, a sharp contrast to the pleading in Zira's tone. "You think I can go back to who I was? I have embraced the power within me, and now I am free." Cole's heart sank as he realized the full extent of what they were facing. This wasn't a woman they could reason with. She was no longer just Zira's daughter. She had become something else entirely, something beyond the Vicari, beyond the Virilak, something that had been twisted by the same forces they had tried to escape. She was the embodiment of the darkness that had consumed her species. Zira stepped forward again, her voice unwavering. "We all change, I understand that, but there is still good in you, I know it. You are my daughter, and no matter what you've become, I will fight for you. I will always fight for you." The woman's eyes glowed brighter, and the temperature in the room dropped even further, the air crackling with raw power. "You don't get it, do you?" she whispered, her voice a hiss. "You can't save me, not anymore." Zira reached out, her hand trembling. "Please, come with me. We can rebuild, we can fix everything." For a moment there was silence. Zira's daughter hesitated, and in that brief pause, Cole felt a flicker of hope. Maybe there was still a chance. Maybe there was still a part of her left that remembered who she truly was. But that hope was short-lived. The woman turned her head slowly, her gaze dark and full of malice. "No, you have no idea what you're asking." She lifted her hand, and the air in the room twisted violently. The ground beneath them began to crack, energy pulsing from the woman's outstretched fingers. Zira stepped back, her eyes wide with fear. "You don't have to do this. You don't have to be this weapon. You were once the future of our people." "I am the future," the woman snapped, her voice laced with fury. "The future of the Virilak, the future of everything, and I will not let anyone, not even you, stop me." With a sudden, sharp movement, she sent a wave of energy crashing toward them. The force of it threw Cole and Zira off their feet, sending them sprawling to the ground. The room was filled with a deafening roar as the very walls shook under the strain of the woman's power. Cole struggled to stand, his mind racing. They couldn't let her unleash this power. They couldn't let her destroy everything, including herself. But how could they stop her? She was far stronger than they had ever anticipated. Her energy was wild, uncontrolled, and there was no telling what would happen if it went unchecked. Zira slowly stood, her face pale but resolute. "We have to stop her, but we can't kill her. She's still our daughter." Cole glanced at her, understanding the unspoken truth. They had no choice now. This was no longer a fight to save a world. It was a fight to save the only family Zira had left. But how could they fight against someone who held the power of a star in her hands? The woman raised her hands again, this time with a slow, deliberate motion. "I'm done hiding," she said, her voice cold. "I will take what is mine, and I will crush anyone who stands in my way." Zira's eyes flickered with a fierce light. "Then I'll stop you no matter what it takes." Before Cole could react, Zira launched herself toward her daughter, her body surrounded by a brilliant energy that emanated from her very soul. She didn't hesitate. She didn't flinch. She charged forward, not with the intent to destroy, but with the intent to reach her daughter. The woman, with a wave of her hand, sent a blast of energy flying at Zira. But in that moment, Zira did something unexpected. She didn't try to fight back. She didn't deflect the attack or retaliate. Instead, she stepped into the blast, letting it hit her full force. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Zira collapsed to the ground, her body trembling. She had taken the full brunt of her daughter's power. Cole rushed forward, instinctively reaching for her, but before he could get close, Zira's hand shot up, stopping him. "Don't," she whispered, her voice weak. "This is the only way." Cole didn't understand. He knelt beside her, confusion written on his face. "What do you mean, she's killing you?" Zira smiled weakly, the faintest trace of a tear in her eye. "I'm not the one she needs to fight. It's herself. She needs to remember who she is, Cole. She needs to know that she doesn't have to be this." The woman, still standing in the center of the room, watched them both with a growing sense of disgust. "What is this?" she asked, her voice trembling with frustration. "You think this weakness will change anything?" Zira raised her head, her voice stronger than before. "This is love. This is what will change everything. You don't have to carry this burden alone." The woman's expression faltered for the briefest of moments. Her eyes flickered as though something deep inside her was stirring, but it was fleeting, and she shook her head as if to clear it. "You don't understand. You're just a fool." Cole stood and faced her. He knew they were running out of time. He couldn't let Zira's sacrifice be in vain. He had to act. Maybe we don't understand, he said, his voice full of resolve. But we're not going to give up on you. No matter how far you've fallen, you're still the daughter of Zira. You're still part of the Virilak. And there's still good in you. The woman's eyes flickered again, just for a moment. But it was enough. The energy around her began to waver, weakening as her connection to the destructive power she had embraced began to unravel. Her hands lowered slowly, the tension in the room lessening with each passing second. The overwhelming force that had been swirling around her began to dissipate. "No," she whispered as though trying to fight it. "No, I can't." Zira, still on the ground, reached out with trembling hands. You can still choose. You're not alone. You don't have to be the weapon they made you." For a moment it seemed as though nothing had changed. The room remained still and Cole's heart pounded in his chest. But then the woman took a slow step forward, her body shaking with effort. Her eyes met Zira's, and for the first time Cole saw something human return in the depths of her gaze. I don't know who I am anymore," she whispered, her voice breaking. Zira's eyes softened with tears. "You are my daughter, you are the future of our people, and you are not alone." The woman hesitated, but then she lowered her head. The energy that had surrounded her faded completely, leaving only the quiet hum of the room behind. And in that silence, the woman finally whispered the words that Zira had longed to hear. "I'm sorry." Zira moved to her feet, her arms open. Without another word, her daughter stepped into her embrace. It wasn't the end. It was only the beginning.